Yeah, why not?
Good evening. We're back again, and we're back again to talk Indicator, but this time, what I would say is the essence of collecting in the UK market, I think, are the Indicator box sets. Even if you don't like boutique Blu-rays, these things are pretty as pieces of art. I'm here, as usual, with my good friend, Solid Ronin. You can introduce yourself and say hello.
How are you doing? How's everybody doing? Yeah. It's great to be back. It seems so long ago since we did the last one.
Once a week. I almost felt like not enough time to prepare the amount of preparation that we do for these. But
yes, it's
here we are.
Yeah, because some collectors may be criticised for essentially liking cardboard boxes, but in the case of Indicator's box sets, they do lovely cardboard, and their artwork is really fantastic on the whole.
I don't think it can be underestimated how utterly beautiful some of this cardboard is, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a bit reductive to say people are cardboard lovers, because it turns out I really like cardboard.
Yeah. I mean, where would we be without cardboard?
Where would we be without cardboard? Yeah. Indeed.
What's cardboard ever done for us?
Have our first viewer, Cars here, into the blues here. Good evening to yourself. I hope you're keeping well.
Evening.
And as we go through the comments as they come in, we had I'd say a short 30-second planning meeting before this running, yes. And we decided we would just go through the box sets in sort of order and categorize them into must buy, good, but wait for a sale, and maybe, you don't need to be bothered depending on your taste.
Yeah. For the completist, maybe.
For the completist.
That would be a way to put it, I guess.
And it should be said, I, unlike you, have not seen every film or even every box set. There are a couple of box sets I haven't ventured into at all, as we get to.
Blimey.
For no good reason other than, it's not the time of the year or whatever. And it's probably not the ones you're thinking of. So.
Yeah, obviously the latest one I haven't got through for obvious reasons, but we'll get to that.
I have made a start in that one, though. I am looking forward to getting to that. And Nathan's here as well, my good friend Nathan Jones. He's at work right now. I mean, as if that was an excuse, Nathan. I mean, toilet breaks, gastric, abdominal issues can always crop up.
Yes.
That cause you to take extended breaks, or something that you might be better in about an hour. Something that's just passing through. I don't know. It's like you
could argue maybe we're harder work than work, but there you go.
Again, the gastric and abdominal issues was just listening to us. I wasn't referring to anything to do with an individual. That was us indeed. So the first one, chronologically, we actually talked a bit about last week, which was Sinbad.
Look at that cover.
I mean...
And you get films as well. That's amazing.
Spineage is all important, I think. And actually, I think the Sinbad spine is one of the nicest. I love that they set out this kind of idea down. That they would just give us the names, just in case I forgot what was inside it.
Yes, just in case.
So the 3 films and the booklet. And we did talk about this last week, but I think I don't know where this falls for you, but this isn't a must-buy for me.
Absolutely.
Very much.
When I did my box set ranking a couple of years ago, I thought this would be number 1. It didn't turn out that way, but it was still very high on the list.
Yeah, even for giving it the first. And I think it's fair to say if the first couple of box sets weren't big winners for Indicator, they may have done no more.
Yeah.
But Sinbad, as we talked about last week, between great films, great effects, good old adventure fantasy stories, I don't think there's enough of those in the world. It's something that I hold very near and dear to my heart, my collection. And as I said last week, I sort of wish I'd have sold it at a certain point.
Yeah, it did go to a crazy price. And then last year on their anniversary, they re-released it with a slightly orange belly band and just the Blu-rays rather than the DVD Blu-ray set.
Indeed. So, yeah, and I see since our conversation last week, the belly bands are no more.
Yes, well, I took them off for this episode, and I get Chris's point. They may slip back on, but certainly for ease of actually showing them off, right, instead of having to take the band off every single time.
I would never. I'm not a total monster. I wouldn't throw them away. I mean, they're definitely part of the thing. But when you it's also a nice way of knowing which ones you've watched, I think, as well. You know, in my case, when I have the belly band off and it sits in the shelf and go, I have watched that complete box set. But just another 20 to do.
Yes. But some of the artwork you don't really want to
for sure.
be obscured by
totally wonderful artwork indeed. And I think that full spinach with just the rainbow effect in the bottom, the thing in the bottom is very, very, very pretty. And so
I suppose the belly band can kind of cover your numbers, and then you go, oh, what numbers are those?
Well, I don't know if your shelf looks anything like mine, in which I decided at one stage that I would just take all the box sets out and put those together.
Yeah, I haven't done that.
I
know quite a lot of people do that, put the box sets together. And...
Can't do it.
No. Not numbers.
Do it. Just it's because the numbers are showing on the spines.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you know, it's like it's telling you all the time to say, you know, you're not supposed to do this. Yeah. There's a reason for it. Yeah, indeed. Card's been saying I was slightly obsessed with all the creatures in this set. To me, it wasn't an appreciation of how they did it. They were real. I completely especially. Don't ask me for the names of the creatures because now you're just going far too far. But the multi-handed swordsman in isn't it the first Sinbad film that one's in? With the High Krishna head or whatever, that kind of thing. It's just one of those like beyond memorable.
Is that not supposed to be the goddess Kali? Maybe
that's the goddess Kali. See, this is why you're here.
Absolutely,
I mean, if I was here by myself, this would have no merit or use in the world.
Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Goddess Kali.
Goddess Kali. Well, it terrified me. Like that was I can't wield one sword. Never mind that many swords.
Yeah, it's the fact that all of these skeletons were different from film to film. It wasn't just the same skeletons.
That's right.
There were slight differences in them, and
that is no way a jest at Marvel movies or anybody that would reuse assets like Umberto Lenzi or anything like that. This was very much celebrating the work of Harryhausen and his team.
Absolutely.
And so on. Speaking of which, that leads us on to Volume 1 of The Wonderful World of Harryhausen, which contained 3...
If I can actually find it.
I mean, it's diverse films, I would say. It came from beneath the sea, 20 Million Miles to Earth, and the 3 Worlds of Gulliver.
It did, as I'm desperately trying to find it.
Oh, this is right. Pause it. Right, everyone can just go.
There we go. Look at the artwork in that.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's got.
And the spine is just a continuation, but
of it the whole way around, which is something they sort of seem to do away with very quickly.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And I think both Harryhausen sets, again, fantasy would be the genre. Again, they sort of take different slants on fantasy, but they sort of all bleed together in my head in one because of the common thread that goes through them all. Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, I mean, this one, I guess, is kind of maybe the overlooked 3 films. I don't think I had actually seen the 3 Worlds of Gulliver before. I was more familiar with the first 2, but that's a lovely film as well. Obviously Technicolor, but it's maybe not as memorable as the other 2.
Yeah.
But it's still lots of fun. And again, the extras in these Harryhausen sets are just sublime. And if anybody's interested in Harryhausen, they're absolutely essential. I'm going to spoiler territory, but they're essential.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say, actually, this Harryhausen set is the first one that I really looked at and went, okay. And something that will become a recurring theme, actually, through a lot of these are very much celebrations of the filmmakers rather than necessarily the films themselves. I think it's easy to kind of group Sinbad together and say those are 3 Sinbad films. They make an obvious box set. But in this case, it wasn't just, here we have 6 Harryhausen films. This is like, we have 6 Harryhausen films across 2 volumes here that we are going to celebrate Harryhausen and tell you as much as we can about Ray Harryhausen.
Yes,
it's like mum and his dad missed
his brother. Yeah, and that's the second one. That's volume 2, and again, the continuation of the spine.
Indeed. But that has Mysterious Island, First Men in the Moon, and the Sony disc of Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes. Everybody's
already
grew up
in its own right. Yes. What do you think of the decision to include it, given that it wasn't really an Indicator disc?
I mean, I guess because there are other Harryhausen's that they could have included, but I think because it holds such a special place in the hearts of many, certainly in the UK, I think of a certain age, to have a Harryhausen set without Jason and the Argonauts would have seemed a little bit strange, even though it's not necessarily, as you say, an indicator disc.
Yeah,
some of them have the titles in the top as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think most of them do. I think all of them do, to be fair.
I'm in complete agreement with you, by the way. I think it would have sort of cheapened the value overall worthiness of the set if Jason the Argonauts wasn't there. Especially, I can imagine if this was released just in America or something, there wouldn't have been that tie to Sunday, Saturday afternoon like there was for an awful lot of people. It just felt like, to me at least, Jason and the Argonauts was on every weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. It was always on at Christmas, bizarrely. It's not that you think of it as a Christmas film, but it kind of always was on at Christmas for some reason.
Yeah, you could be forgiven that it was the only Harryhausen film for some stage.
Yeah.
It was just continually seen to be on, and it was something that continually raised excitement when it was on TV. When people looked at it and went, "Oh my god, don't those films look wonderful even to this day?"
Yeah.
And they certainly do. And I think the animatronic nature of those is something that still stands the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, you get a special, warm, fuzzy feeling when you watch a Harryhausen film. Maybe that, again, is just nostalgia, but that's why we love certain films over others, because some of them have an emotional bond to us or takes us to a time and place.
It would be interesting, and I encourage anybody that's seen this that didn't grow up in that era, who's watching the Harryhausen films without the nostalgia feeling like the two of us might do, what kind of attachment you have to Harryhausen, now, having just watched these sets or kind of heard about them or kind of doing it. Maybe you're, while it tickles a nostalgia bone for us, maybe it doesn't for yourself, and there's something else about the filmmaker that you really celebrate, his ability to tell a story.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some people just view them as kind of quaint little dated films from a time where films were created differently, but they still just transport you to an amazing fantasy world.
It always amazes me when, probably back in the days when they were released, the 61, 64, as those three films were released, that they would have been very big budget or very spectacular things to go and see in the cinema. And within about 20 years, they reduced to Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon fare on TV.
Yes.
How weird and wonderful that can be.
Yeah, and Sinbadorama, or whatever they would call it.
If
they always had these bizarre names.
Yeah, if we had a Sinbadorama in my local cinema, I think I'd still be signing up for that triple bill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get in between. So, strongly recommends for all of those sets so far.
Absolutely.
I think
whether you can get your hands on them or not is a different story. But
that is true. But even as single releases, each of the films, I think, are all worth picking up. You can't pick up Jason and the Argonauts, but there is a premium collection edition of that you can pick up for peanuts.
Yes.
And get an identical disc to that one. Up next was the first of Volume 1, Fear Warning of the Hammer sets.
Can I pick the right one out? That's a good question. Because strangely enough, I didn't put them in order.
Well, it's not enough to say the one with the black spine with white
the
writing.
one with the black spine.
There's more than one with black spine, unfortunately. That is the one indeed.
I mean, look at that. It's the thing with these ones are they're just so simple, the covers, but just so beautiful in their simplicity.
Yeah.
It's like
it's one of the reasons. I like the reference. It's kind of what I was talking about with taking the belly bands off. When you take the belly band off and you just see that front cover in its own right, you kind of go, there's something spectacular
there's a clarity to it.
Yeah, there is.
That is just wonderful.
So 4 films in here: Maniac, The Gorgon, The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, and Fanatic. Spine numbers 54 to 57.
No separate booklet though?
No separate booklet indeed. Favorite out of the set, film-wise? I think beforehand the Gorgon was the most famous one.
It would have to be the Gorgon, I think.
Interesting. I have a
Um,
soft spot for Fanatic, actually, I have to say. I think some of the performances in the Fanatic really
yes,
really grabbed
but
me.
they're
But
all tremendous fun.
I think all four of them are very good films
Yes.
indeed. And my feeling of coming away from the first of the Hammer sets was, well, this is how you do these box sets and these kind of
Yeah,
filmmakers and again the Women of Hammer section that's in all of these. And then I don't know if the
absolutely.
first one had any David Hockville stuff. I'm not, it doesn't ring a bell.
Um,
I don't think so, actually, just on quick look.
it does
Oh, it
on
does.
Wilfred Joseph's
Ah.
an appreciation of the
Oh,
Hammer
he
film
does. He
score.
does
Yeah,
indeed. So David Hockville is the guy that sits at the piano and takes you through the scores of various, well, in this case, Hammer films or otherwise, and take you through
yeah,
the genesis of the themes, etc. Some of my absolute favorite extras that are on there, and I've seen he's just done an Arrow video release recently as well that did exactly the same thing. So his work, I'd say, grew in fame from here, probably more so than anything else.
yeah.
But get
Because
in,
obviously the music in Hammer is one of the things that's kind of overlooked and
yeah.
underrated. So Huckvale actually spotlighting these composers, and most of them have really interesting stories of how their careers, and because it isolates the music goes through, you do actually get a much better appreciation of the music, because generally when you're watching Hammer films, you're not really paying that much attention to the music. It's usually the production design and whether the set's wobbling or whatever. How many times you can see Michael Ripper in the film. So you're not really paying attention to the music that much, but
That's
Huckvale
right.
really shines a spotlight on it, and it's really, again, as you say, one of the best extras.
That are in there. And also one of the real joys I think that you get out of a lot of these box sets is getting introduced to actors and people that you've probably seen in other things, but actually again really
Yeah,
shining a spotlight on them. And I think one of the reasons that I love Fanatic so much from this set is from the extras that went into the Tallulah Bankhead.
yeah,
It's just go like I couldn't help but learn more about that woman's genesis, her acting career, and her life and stuff.
yeah.
And you're just like, this is terrific.
Her story's pretty fantastic.
It is indeed. Another reprobate has just stepped in, unfortunately.
This evening.
Evening, Nazareth Pro. I believe he will be doing live streams very soon, if I was to believe the test you were doing.
Yes, I think we all might have a go. I might even have a go.
Oh, see what's happened and started. And Carl, I said the Hammer films were another large part of my childhood. What a delight to revisit them with these sets. Cushion and the other goats. They certainly are.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Funny enough, I didn't really have much of a childhood or even early adulthood thing with Hammer. So for me, this was very much an introduction to Hammer, aside from like a couple of very prominent, famous ones that I'd seen. So I was nearly like a blank slate for a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, because again, Hammer just has a reputation of doing one thing, but these box sets through Indicator have really exposed them for doing all these different kind of genres and types that as a kid growing up, you weren't really aware of at all. But they really dipped their toes in pretty much everything.
Everything that went on, which leads us on to, well, I assume a very strong, hearty recommend for that one as well.
Yes, absolutely. I believe this is the second one, unless I'm going to pick up the wrong one.
So Criminal Intent, this was the ones that were
Because
the
the belly band
stories.
doesn't say volume 2. So I have to... I'm so used to knowing which one's which.
You're saying this is a design flaw now? This is where you're...
Yeah, I'm having second thoughts now.
I always think this the cover art for this being green kind of jumps out a bit, you know, from what was before. But this was the 4 crime films of a way. The Snorkel, Never Take Sweets from a Stranger, The Full Treatment, and Cash and Demand. I think all 4 films are terrific. I think, but I could put them in order. I think top film in the box is almost certainly Cash and Demand. I'd be amazed if anybody watches this box set and doesn't say Cash and Demand.
Yeah, Cash and Demand is one of the best little two-handers you'll ever see with Peter Cushing and Andre Morell. I mean, what more could you ask for?
It's an absolutely wonderful film.
Yeah, it's tight, it's tense, it's wonderful.
It's very cleverly written, I think, as well. Yeah. And again, use the most of a couple of sets, you know, without going into too much after that.
And again, lots of these sets, if you missed out on them, they do release them obviously in standard edition. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few sets we'll talk about that perhaps there's maybe only, one or two that you should definitely kind of try and check out. So it's great that Indicator do that as well. Again, we're not sponsored by Indicator in any way, but it is good that they do release the standard. So if you do miss out on the box set,
I think it's fair to say that it actually goes the other way. We sponsor an Indicator an awful lot of time. They give us my bloody money every month. What order would you put the other releases in this box set in?
I would probably go with Never Takes Candy from a Stranger or Sweets from a Stranger, depending which cut you watch. And then the Snorkel, because it's just nuts. And then the Full Treatment.
So I would have Full Treatment down the bottom, but I kind of like it. I do like it as well, but I think the Snorkel and Never Take Sweets from a Stranger.
It might be my favourite Hammer set, because again, it's so unexpected. It's so unexpected because again, at the time, it was like, hang on, they did these kind of films as well.
Yeah,
and to see Peter Cushing in a quote unquote
that's
normal film.
Yes, not
such a
horror.
joy.
Yeah. My favorite box set of theirs as well. I think all 4 films are some level of very good, and a couple of them that are quite brilliant. Even Never Take Sweets from a Stranger, I think, is really does that subject material way better than a lot of modern films, etc. And some really amazing performances. I'm trying to think. Felix, the guy who acts.
Yes, the old guy.
The old guy in it. Yeah. Again, that I've seen in a million things since. But again, there was a deep dive into his.
And again, it's all about class, because that's a rich family.
That's
and,
right.
The kids are from, not necessarily a poor family, but a kind of new family to the area. And they're almost like the lords of the manor, essentially.
And more David Huckfield stuff, of course.
Exactly.
But yes, my favorite of the Hammer box sets. And then we got our first curveball in terms of release. And I think one that was this number 1 for you? Which is 5 Tall Tales. The Bedecker and Radov sets.
Again, I was not expecting this to be number 1.
No.
The films are all under 80 minutes or 80 minutes and under.
That's the reason it's number 1 then. There you go.
But again, it's these psychological 50s westerns that are just so good, full of moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
And again, you will do it for Randolph Scott. Just absolutely beautiful. They have these, it's Technicolor, obviously, an amazing cover. But within that Technicolor vista, you just have this loneliness and desolation, and a kind of level of desperation to the characters. Randolph Scott, again, a guy that I've never really been that huge a fan of.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Bedecker,
he's so good in these films. And the films themselves are just, I mean, are they all masterworks? Perhaps not, but the batting average in the set is so high. And again, they're so tight, not any padding. They just need to do what they do, and they're just so efficient and just so wonderful.
I think one of the mistakes I made before I started was I sort of thought that these stories were all continuations of the same character. Yeah. And at a certain point, I was like, this doesn't seem to be, that's not the thing. They are just very much Westerns set in a place. And like a lot of Westerns, I think, they just tell good moral stories. There's a bad guy, there's a good guy. We'll have a shootout somewhere in the middle. But the ultimate good of Randolph Scott's character in a lot of these films is actually just that ground, a bit like John Wayne was in a lot of his movies, etc. as well.
Yeah, but just Bedecker's kind of a little bit of strangeness in them, and a little bit of off-kilter stuff. Obviously, Bedecker was a bit of a character, as get that impression of some of the extras, and obviously they released the bullfighter and the lady as well as a single edition later.
As a single, indeed. But I think that is one of the real joys, and one of the things that really enhances this box set is that you get that conversation with Bedecker as part of the extras, and you get an insight into who he was as a person. It wasn't just about Randolph Scott, who was seen in all of the films, but also about the kind of, as you say, the weird and wonderful, wacky nature of him as a man.
Because he said because they stopped making films at a kind of earlier age, his reputation will just grow and grow because they stopped making films, so he couldn't make bad films. Whereas all these directors have kept their careers going, but their qualities went down and down and down.
Love it. Five Tall Tales is an absolutely terrific box
Yeah,
set.
I wasn't expecting it to be number one when I ranked them, but it couldn't.
But somehow you just got there.
Yeah, I just had to.
You were whittling down, and then you looked down and see there was one box set left.
Yes.
Which brings me to actually what is my favorite box set, I think, of the entire lot, which is the Samuel Fuller box set.
Oh, yes.
Samuel Fuller at Columbia, to be more exact, 37 to 61. Also sold out. That contains a lot of films. Happened in Hollywood, Adventure in Sahara, Shockproof, Scandal Sheet, Crimson Kimono, and Underworld USA. I think, or Part of the Press, sorry, I missed it as well. I think the first disc of the three early movies are all decent, but I think once you go to Shockproof, I think you're in four absolutely fabulous films, and a real celebration of who Fuller was as a writer and filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real deep dive into his career. So usually box sets are films that the person's directed, but these are films that Sam Fuller wrote the script for, didn't direct. Some of them based on a story that he wrote, and then you get later in the box set films that he actually wrote and directed. So it's a real deep dive into his whole career. And for me, you know, Underworld USA, and especially Crimson Kimono. I mean, the Crimson Kimono is just absolutely great. I would say it's a 5-star for me, right up there with Naked Kiss and Shot Corridor. Is just amazing. Sam Fuller films, who's still kind of underrated, but he just has an honesty and a rawness to his work.
It's interesting because I agree, Crimson Kimono especially being a standout, but this is a box set that when it's released doesn't seem to have most of Fuller's most famous films.
Yeah,
you know, it's very much some of the other films that he did. In fact, if I was to look at like the Eureka box set that went out, there's a lot more of his much more prominent films that people recognize, and I'm not taking away because those films are utterly incredible as well. But the journey that you go on from, I think, including the likes of It Happened in Hollywood and Adventure in Sahara, and even Part of the Press, because you get the early themes of Fuller's work, really adds something to the box set and the story that you're taking, because you're taking on a journey through his work of a nearly 30-odd year span of his career.
Because I mean, certainly in music, I like to collect everything, so you do kind of get an arc, and that box set almost gives you an arc of Fuller's career, just within that span. So.
And I think that's the reason it's my favorite, because it's the first one when I finished watching the last disc, watched all the extras, went through all the material and stuff that was inside, that I went, I get a really good understanding of who Fuller is as a person now and as a filmmaker. And if somebody wants to have a conversation with Fuller, I'm not totally lost anymore, rather than saying, oh, I've seen this film or I've seen this film. And you really get the appreciation that these box sets are curations of an entire career or an entire representation of a filmmaker.
And again, they've taken care and the time for the extras. Again, not tooting their trumpet or anything, but they are a small company, and to take that time and go in there, I mean, it's, again, as you say, it could have been so easy just to do Pick Up in South Street and you know, just get the big hits essentially, but to really dig deep into his work is really admirable.
Yeah, like you say, it's not just a collection of, oh, here's the Samuel Fuller films, we could get them, stick them in a box set, branded as Samuel Fuller as a sort of well-known filmmaker, but actually to go, no, we're going to do a bit more with this. We're going to make this a celebration. Frankly, I'm sorry, not sorry. You know, the best part about this is, Carl, I have to say, all of these so far are sold out, all these box sets.
Absolutely.
So don't need to worry. Just pick up singular films, all of the singular films, but
yes,
but otherwise, you know,
make your own box set and just create your own box set. And,
unbelievably good, and a lot of these are in the 5 or 3 for 15 or something that they do at the moment anyway. So this is pretty decent fare for going through.
But certainly for me, Crimson Kimono is just jaw-droppingly good.
Brilliant. That's, I just think it's an utterly brilliant box set. So again, another hearty recommend. I promise not all of them are hearty recommends.
No, we will get to
There's some other ones.
Yes.
But I suggest that the next one is also a hearty recommend, which is volume 3 of the Hammer box sets.
Is this one because I don't have the belly band?
It is indeed. That is
Again,
Blood and Terror is what it was called.
Look at that cover.
It's
Simple green,
isn't it?
black and red, but wow, that is beautiful.
So the films contained within this are Camp on Blood Island. It's a Val Guest film from 58. Yesterday's Enemy, a Val Guest film from 59. The Stranglers of Bombay by Terence Fisher in 59. And Terror of the Tongues by Anthony Bushell in 61. I give you some of the names in the films there and the times for it because I think this is where the strength of this box set really is. We get some very prominent directors and theming of Hammer films in and around this time.
Yeah.
I think there's one film, again, I have it in like one of my favorite films that I've ever seen. I think Yesterday's Enemy is astonishingly good.
Yeah, it was another one of those jaw droppers that, again, Hammer did these kind of films as well.
Yeah.
Based in a play about British soldiers doing un-British soldier things.
Burma, yeah.
It's just phenomenal. Very much like Black Narcissus, not shot in Burma. But you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Because it's that old adage of a military colonel or general saw the film and said, "Oh yes, I recognise where that was shot." It's like, no, it was in a studio at Elstree or something, Pinewood.
But they genuinely, when they go through the extras, I don't think you can really tell for a lot of the film. I think that's one of the wonders of monochrome films, insofar as they were able to hide a lot of the bits that would have been a giveaway.
But again, it's another celebration of those character actors that never got a shot at being the leading man, but are just so good.
Yeah. One of the other one that I'd really like to highlight is Camp on Blood Island, because I think Camp on Blood Island is a bit serious for a Hammer movie.
It's a bit dark.
Yeah, it's pretty dark in terms of subject content, and for what was supposedly an entertainment company putting stuff out that kind of is a bit more hard hitting, I think, than.
And obviously, we all know through the extras of other sets the adventures Hammer used to have with the censors and changing things and cutting things to please the censors. But Camp on Blood Island is a strange. You'll kind of be. It's one of those films where you go, they got away with that, and even with the censor things. It's just like they got away with that. And the same with Yesterday's Enemy as well.
Yeah, Stranglers of Bombay, I think, is one of those. I mean, I quite like Stranglers of Bombay, but I think it's kind of a bit racist.
Probably, yes. It's one of those Friday night after midnight films, basically.
I'm talking about racist Terror of the Tongues. Anyway.
Yeah, obviously the cover of the box set, that is Christopher Lee.
Yeah,
but we'll get to Christopher Lee, and
we'll get to that in a while.
We'll get to that in a little bit as well. It was a different time.
Okay. So another strong recommend.
Yes.
Now, next one. The William Castle sets, the two of them together, Volume 1 and Volume 2.
Now, Volume 1, I think, was pretty high for me because it is fairly spectacular. You could argue perhaps not the greatest cover in the world, but it's still striking. But this has The Tingler, which is just one of my favourite Vincent Price films of all time. 13 Ghosts, Homicidal, which is not a rip-off of Psycho at all. And Mr. Sardonicus, which is absolutely fantastic. So I absolutely adore Volume 1. Volume 2... but Volume 1 is just stunningly good.
So the interesting thing about Volume 2 is it's still not sold out.
I think there's maybe a reason for that, Chris.
So it says Zot's 13 Frightened Girls, The Old Dark House and Straight Jacket. I mean, I would argue a much better cover.
Oh yeah, the cover's wonderful. And I would say one of these films is absolutely great. I don't know whether you can guess which one, but one of them is absolutely wonderful.
Well, here's the thing. I haven't seen any of these films in the William Castle sets. I have owned both of them for a while, and it was one of those ones, oh, I'll get round it around scary season. That might be something nice to keep at that stage. So which is the recommendation from this set?
I think I did a random review on it. It's Straight Jacket with Joan Crawford and an axe murderer. I mean, what more could you want? This is late Joan Crawford from 1963, and she gives one of her craziest performances. Zots is a fun little film. The Old Dark House, again, there's better versions of the story, but it's not bad. But 13 Frightened Girls is pretty awful. It's about 13 girls, not 13 of them are frightened at any one time. I think one of them is the daughter of a diplomat or something, and somebody's trying to... It's really quite bad. I don't know what William Castle was thinking. I mean, Zots is 1962, and all the other ones were 1963. I think he should have eased his burden a little bit and not bothered with 13 Frightened Girls.
Well, maybe he was coming to the end of a contract that he had to fulfill with.
Possibly. But Straight Jacket, which you can get on an individual, I think that might be the only one they've released individually from that box set, is just wonderful. If you're a fan of Joan Crawford, especially late Joan Crawford, which she just let loose, it's just so good. The others, this is definitely one I would suggest you don't even bother with the sale. I would just buy Straight Jacket, personally. I wouldn't want to lead Carol down the garden path and say this is essential, because it's not essential. But again, if you love it, then that's absolutely fantastic.
Talking about things that aren't essential, 2 kidneys. You get a good price for the other one.
Yep, absolutely.
So after that, see, not all recommends. There you go.
See, absolutely.
We're on the Hammer Volume 4, which is again quite well-known territory, I think, for Hammer at that stage. I think that's an absolutely terrific cover, by the way.
Yeah.
Love the theme of the yellow. So this has Revenge of Frankenstein from 1958 by Terence Fisher. Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll by Terence Fisher, again from 1960. Taste of Fear by Seth Tolt in 1961. And of course, from 1962, The Damned by your best friend at the moment, Mr. Joseph Wolfe.
Yes, absolutely. Again, The Damned for me, it's probably the film out of the set, even though all the other ones are a lot of fun. One of those films that goes a certain way and you think it's going to be a certain thing, and then it just takes a big left turn and becomes something completely different. The Frankenstein and the Dr. Jekyll ones perhaps aren't the best adaptations, obviously, but they're both interesting, especially for Christopher Lee in The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, because he doesn't play who you perhaps might think he plays.
Like you, I think my Lucy journey had started a bit before this set, and kind of having this reappreciation. I think this came out after, like, even Eve came out on Indicator, or maybe I watched it after I watched Eve anyway, and I was kind of like, oh, I need to reappraise what way I think of Lucy in general. But definitely, I think a lot of people would have been very happy about the kind of having the Frankenstein film for a start in one of the Hammer box sets, and getting just generally a taste of the horror that Hammer was probably more famous for than anything else.
It's maybe even a little comforting just to have a Frankenstein and a Dr. Jekyll actually in a set as well. It's more familiar kind of ground, like you say.
Indeed. And then we're on Volume 5, Death in the Seat of Hammer, which is sort of like the adventure box set, I think it's fair to say.
This is a completely different milieu, as the critics might say.
Indeed. So the first film is Visa to Canton, also known as Passport to China, I think, from 1961. The Pirates of Blood River by John Gillian in 1962. The Scarlet Blade by John Gillian in 1963. And The Brigand of Kandahar in 1965.
Any recommendations from this set for you?
I mean, I quite like Visa to Canton. I know it's sort of like James Bond light, and again, some of the actors that they pick to play the parts is more than problematic, given that the older lady that's dressed up to be Chinese is particularly a problem. But Kwok's in it, but I think Richard Basehart is pretty good in the lead role. I think it's pretty, as an adventure film goes, and being, I think it's quite fun.
For me, it's easily the weakest one out of
Right.
the four. I have a real soft spot for the Brigand of Kandahar. Again,
yeah.
there's problems with all of these, really, or most of them, as far as making them now or whatever. And the Scarlet Blade, if you're one of those people that has a lot of Indicator, again, as we talked about last week, there are kind of through lines, and one of them is early Oliver Reed.
Yes.
He is in a lot of Indicator releases, and he's in a lot of early Hammer films, which, again, not being the huge Hammer expert or anything like that before these sets, it's remarkable how many young Oliver Reed performances we see. So where would you kind of put this set as far as essential sale, pick out individuals? Because I don't think these have been released individually yet.
Yeah, actually, is this sold out yet? This is not sold out, so you can still pick up the box set by itself. I think this is a set that if you like one of them, you'll probably like most of them, if you know what I mean. So try one out, pick your poison there. I think Visa to Canton is slightly different from the other three in terms of theming or otherwise. I think one of the things that actually jumps out to me when looking at this, and just looking at the covers, even on the screen, it is some of the best individual case artwork for for some of the films. But yeah, might be one of those, just to kind of see if you like one of them. Maybe leave Visa to Canton to the end, because I think it is thematically slightly different in that it's more James Bond-esque and adventure kind of stuff that we've got for some of the other ones.
Flipped all of these, I think.
That one's the original. And then Kandahar is that one's the original as well. So you're good there.
Pirates of Blood River.
Pirates of Blood, some great names, but yeah, these aren't quite so hearty recommends. I think as some of the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one would probably be pick it up in a sale, because again, look at that cover; it's a beautiful cover.
Some great.
And you can even watch the films if you feel like it.
Terrific. Then with John Ford. John Ford at Columbia has a lot of these at Columbia. Which is 4 films. The Whole Town's Talking from 35, Long Grey Line from 55, Gideon's Day 58, and The Last Hurrah from 58. And I haven't seen all of these either, so I'm only going off the Long Grey Line and the Whole Town's Talking. Whole Town's Talking,
yeah. I mean, I think for me this was quite low in my ranking, which might be sacrilegious. The Whole Town Talking is fantastic, and to me, it's the film of the set. Edward G. Robinson in dual roles. That one's an absolute cracker. Gideon's Day is wonderful as well, and I think that led to a TV series in the UK, I believe.
Oh yeah, could have
following Gideon about. And to me, The Long Grey Line and The Last Hurrah are good films, but again, they are more of that John Ford kind of sentimentality and jingoism to some extent. So they're not necessarily films I'm going to revisit in a hurry, but they're still good, 3-star films. But to me, Gideon's Day, even though it's fragmented, but that's the nature of the film, which is actually quite interesting. And The Whole Town's Talking, to me, is an absolute wonder. Edward G. Robinson is just absolutely fantastic.
It elevates it for sure.
And
I think actually the longer line, the reason I watched it, I mean, those first 2 films are the star power of that has Tyrone Power and Maureen O'Hara. Whereas by the time we get to later on, I suppose The Last Hurrah does have Spencer Tracy in it, but not quite the star power of the first 2 films. And I do agree with you about the kind of the John Fordisms of some of his films. I think I can sort of be in the mood sometimes and sometimes not in the mood for that kind of film.
But they're enjoyable enough. I mean, but for me, I would probably... I think The Whole Town Talking might have a single release, a standard release, maybe.
This is still in stock. Still in stock.
It's still in stock. I think that's a good reason for it. Personally, I would pick up The Whole Town's Talking, maybe Gideon's Day, and just leave the rest. But again, that's if you're a John Ford fan, then it's essential. But for me, it's either a sale or just pick a couple out if they get standard releases.
Yeah. Right. Next up is Fu Manchu.
Okie dokie. First of all, look at that cover, though.
I mean, it's stunning.
That orange is just radiant.
Even the faces within the faces on the front cover are
wonderful.
Something else.
Beautiful.
5 films ranging from 65 to 69 that get worse as they go along.
Yes. I would say the first 2 are fun, somewhat racist films. But I mean, they're fun. The last 3 using footage from other films. Jess Franco was involved. Fu Manchu just becomes this quite sad character who's standing shaking his fist at the world going, "You'll pay, I'm gonna," and it's just quite sad. You actually feel sorry for him rather than fearing him because he's Fu Manchu. He's actually quite a pitiful character by the end.
It's a good idea. I suppose Fu Manchu, I think, actually starts as a character in Visa to Canton. I think he's sort of alluded to in that film, actually, now to think about it. But then going on, and it was sort of like an inevitability as soon as that film was released that we were going to get the Fu Manchu films to follow that, which was good fun. Obviously, it's sold out. I mean, I think it's sold out because I think Fu Manchu in general is a recognizable sort of canon name. But
I was actually stunned when they announced it. It was like, are they really getting away with doing that? But again, it is one of those sets that the extras are fantastic, because they go into the history of the character, all the different iterations of the character in film. What they had to put up with shooting, which is a story in itself, actually shooting the films. So again, yes, the films are not perhaps worth watching more than once, but the extras on the set are, if you're interested in that kind of thing, the extras are absolutely wonderful.
Terrific.
And again, it's such a beautiful cardboard box.
Indeed. Look, I think Peter puts it really well here. I love the Fu Manchu set for the good and the terrible. You know what you're sitting down to get out of it, and sometimes that's exactly what you want. The revel in the kind of almost ridiculous nature of some of the later movies, and enjoy actually the good of the other ones together. So, like, it is sold out. I actually am not sure if these have had single releases yet. I assume so.
I don't think so. I'm not sure
I don't know. I can't actually think that I've seen them, but it's been sold out for a while as far as I remember. So maybe they've just decided to cut it off. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So on to, and I feel like grouping all of these together because the Columbia Noir sets start, and I actually have only watched the first 2 because I do one set per November, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In terms, so Columbia Noir 1, 2, and 3 came out together. Basically 3 months in a row. I love the artwork of these sets.
Yeah. This is where your removal of the belly band is.
Oh man, just 2 of them side by side, just giving the story. Oh, so pretty. And this wasn't the first. Was this the first one with the different style booklets? No, Fu Manchu had it. Fu Manchu. Oh no, we've skipped the whole load. I've skipped the whole load.
Yeah. I think
we'll go back to it in a second.
Yeah, I'm sure the Dietrich set had it.
Yeah, it did. So Columbia Noir, 1. There's 3 of those that stand out to me. The other 3, I can't even remember what happened, to be really honest. So the lineup, I think, is a well thought of.
Absolutely brilliant.
The Garment Jungle, I think, is brilliant as well. I really enjoyed that kind of thing. And the other one from that set that jumps out to me is Drive a Crooked Road with Mickey Rooney.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are the 3 films that jump out from that first set to me. The other ones I'm sure are good because my feeling about just generally noir films is there's nary a bad one. You always get something out of it. There's a sort of aimless sort of predictability in some of them that are fun, but those are the 3 that really jump jump out to me from the first set.
Yeah, Escape in the Fog is just a short little tale, does what it wants and then leaves. The Undercover Man is one of those propaganda noirs where, you know, they followed this is a day in the life of the FBI or this is a day in the life of customs. So they're kind of the propaganda noirs, but again, really enjoyable. Five Against the House is this weird, a bunch of college students, even though they all seem to be 40.
Oh, yes, I know that
Kim
one.
Novak somehow in it, and they want to rob a casino. One of them's psychotic, but it's just so odd and bizarre that it's just really enjoyable. But Drive a Crooked Road with Mickey Rooney and Kevin McCarthy, I think, is the heavy. But the lineup, Eli Wallach, directed by Robert Aldridge, Don Siegel.
Yeah, Don Siegel it is.
It's just absolutely wonderful. And again, it has that odd weirdness. Like there's, well, I'm going to spoil it anyway, but there's one scene where Eli Wallach pushes somebody in a wheelchair off a balcony. It's, to me, this is my favourite. Well, it was maybe my favourite until another one, but certainly, certainly Volume 1 was my favourite Colombian noir for a while, put it that way.
Yeah. And then Volume 2 came out, again, out of print. Another real beauty. I love the colouring of these. That was nearly our thumbnail.
Sunburnt orange is just...
Indeed. With Framed from 47, 711 Ocean Drive from 50, The Mob from 51, Affair in Trinidad 52, Tight Spot from 55, Murder by Contract from 58. Highlights, so that's it.
Murder by Contract is a really bizarre little quirky film. Framed, it's got Rita Hayworth. What more can we say? But the other one's very much like the first set. I can't remember too much about them, apart from I enjoyed them. That's very much.
I've watched all of these recently-ish. You know, there was just November past, and I am struggling.
Yeah,
to think.
But the thing is, you enjoy them when you watch them, but
absolutely that's noir.
Sure
I think that's the truth. But most of these sets is that actually once they get to a certain point, they're like, I want to watch a noir movie. Here I have like a steady stream of them, and I can go and watch. But yes, absolutely, I was struggling to identify anything from each other. But funny enough, if you'd have started talking to me about it, it might have just jogged memory in the same way that you did of the other three films that were in the first lot.
Because I will say, for me, the noir sets do kind of go down in quality until perhaps the most recent Colombian noir set.
Okay.
But again, they're still watchable. It's not as if they're bad, but for me, they do kind of start dipping in quality. So Volume 3, again, look at that cover.
Oh,
the red is...
Love the artwork,
Yeah, absolutely stunning.
And but I haven't seen this. The Sniper is the film that everybody talks about off this set.
Yeah, I did a random review of The Sniper, which is a really nice little film. You've got Johnny O'Clock, The Dark Past, Convicted, Between Midnight and Dawn, and City of Fear. Again, I can't remember too much about them, which is terrible, but I enjoyed them all and I would recommend the set. But again, for me, both 2 and 3 aren't as strong as 1.
Strongest one, yeah.
Again, some people just don't like noirs, and that's absolutely fine, and I can see why you wouldn't pick these up, but I could watch noirs all day. That's just me.
So I do have to step back because we missed two box sets out. And one's definitely worth talking about, because I think when this was announced, it was a very large departure from what they'd done beforehand, and that is the Bloody Terror set, the Norman J. Warren set, which I remember starting watching at the time and went, what the hell? Why? Why is this part of the thing? I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy it at the time. It was very much, this doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the oeuvre of Indicator's releases. But I have been revisiting it actually recently, especially because of the more later releases and box sets that put out. This makes a lot more sense now in the context of the Michael J. Murphy sets and a couple of the other ones.
And also, I think did he not die last year or the year before?
Yes, indeed. I think one of the things that struck me about when I went back to this set has been how how great discs are by the inclusion of Norman J. Warren himself. I think he's one of the most interesting. Some of the commentaries that he does in some of the films, he has two commentaries, etc. on. They're really, really fascinating commentaries. They're the kind of things I'll stick on in the car and listen to and watch again. I mean, the films are sort of not in my wheelhouse, so to speak, that much, but again, they are what they are, if you know what I mean. I know what I'm turning on when I'm going to get it. These came out in Vinegar Syndrome, I think, as well.
But again, much like a lot of these guys that make these kind of low budget horror films or exploitation films, he's just a lovely guy. And he pretty much teaches you how to make films.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can't really put a price on that, because obviously a lot of the big directors, when they do commentaries, they're not telling you how to actually make a film, whereas these guys are just so open to sharing. Oh, this is how we did this, and this is how we did that, and because of the budget, we had to do this. So, yes, people can, knock these films, but the extras will make you kind of fall in love with the guy. And there's lots of people who work in the exploitation and horror business that are lovely people.
Yeah,
everybody thinks they're degenerates because they do horror films, but most of them are actually really nice people and kind of open to sharing the secrets and the tricks.
One of the commentaries I was watching recently, and it said something to the effect of, "God, I started to watch the film again in preparation for knowing I was going to do this commentary, and I thought, dear God, nobody needs to see this that many times in short succession. I thought I'd just leave it. I watched the first 10 minutes and thought you'd talk me through and remind me of the bits that I don't remember," which I thought kind of summed it up very, very nicely. And then the other one that I missed out was the Marlene Dietrich set. The one that was Impairment 30 to 35 with Joseph von Sternberg, which came out about a year beforehand in Criterion, but it was always kind of rumored that the Indicator had the rights in the UK, and I think it was accepted to be the slightly better set.
Yeah, and again, they do the wraparound for this one. And this was the first one to have the slim discs.
Slims, it was.
Yeah, this set is absolutely wonderful. The inclusion of kind of Dietrich in her last years is actually heartbreaking. The Twilight of an Angel documentary from 2012. It will bring a tear to a glass eye. And these films show you what a star she was. She might not have been the greatest actor in the world, but bloody hell, she was a star. And it also kind of shows how kind of weak her leading men were, and she never really had much luck with leading men because they were all just paper thin and just kind of burnt by her afterglow, because she's just absolutely radiant.
It's very much in keeping with one of the other sets that we'll talk about here in a second, but it kind of feels like the same idea of like some people may not have been the most beautiful person on the screen, but they had a magnetism and a fire that as soon as they appeared on screen, all attention went towards them. Sam's just said, that Dietrich set is one of the best box sets that he owns. Indeed, it's very comprehensive, and I think was it Rob from the Movie Vault did a movie breakdown of that box set as well. It shows you how much love that it had there as well, and
the production design on some of the films are really extraordinary. And one of them does have an ending that you don't really expect. That's pretty bleak, so I loved it.
A non vintage Hollywood ending, or otherwise. There you go.
Yeah, I would certainly recommend the set. Apart from anything else, just to get to know Dietrich, how strong she was, how she was a trailblazer as far as salaries and things like that. But that last documentary from 2012 is absolutely brutal.
How would you set about recommending the Norman J. Warren set?
Obviously, if you are into British horror, the history of British horror, I would say it's certainly an essential. If you're obviously not, I would easily pass. But personally, I would pick it up in a sale and see what takes your fancy. And certainly the extras are well worth delving into, but it will be one of those.
If you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said you can miss it.
Yeah.
But actually, having done this for another couple of filmmakers, for another couple of box sets, and like I say, I'm revisiting it because I've got so much out of those other things. I love this complete look at somebody's work, you know, and kind of looking at, especially when you get access to that filmmaker as part of the extras process. I think there's something really magical about that Norma Jane Warren set that I didn't see initially.
And again, in some ways, that's what Indicator is, because nobody else, well, maybe Vinegar Syndrome, as you say, but nobody else is kind of looking at career retrospectives, essentially, of directors that, one, most people don't know, myself included, and two, people don't give credit for because they work in a certain area of film.
Yeah, and it's like you say there, that those career retrospectives are not something that I thought Indicator were actually going to become. I think, you know, in a sense, this kind of archive of important British filmmakers who have not been highlighted, and getting the rights to that, and then producing these sets, that beautiful artwork. I mean, I know they did the individual spines for this, but the multicolored nature of all of the spines, that's beautiful. Like, it really is so pretty.
And it must kind of vindicate them to an extent, the fact that these sell out. You know, it's not as if two people buy them; they sell out. So,
well, that's exactly it. I mean, they're creating a celebration of British cinema in a lot of ways, and some of it's seen as in the Hammer stuff, and some of it a little less seen. Speaking of Hammer, Volume 6, Night Shadows, with Shadow of the Cat, Captain Clegg, Phantom of the Opera, and Nightmare. I've only seen a couple of these.
Yeah, look at that cover.
Yeah.
Again, so simple, but effective, like your thumbnail for this episode.
Effective, absolutely, maybe a mirror of the tree. So, highlights of this set?
Captain Clegg. The Shadow of the Cat is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's the one I've seen.
Nightmare's wonderful. And the Phantom of the Opera, I think, is underrated. I know it doesn't have too many fans, but I actually think it's kind of sweet in some way.
I keep on saving that one to watch with the wife because, you know, I've seen it in the Broadway musical, etc. for it to kind of revisit it.
Film. And again, just packed with extras. The extras in this set are really wonderful.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
Lovely artwork.
And Herbert Lom, I mean, you can never do
there's the
have
Peter
more
Cushing,
Herbert Lom. Yeah, Peter Cushing in a little bit of a different role. Maybe Twins of Evil might be the other one where he's a little bit nasty, shall we say. But Captain Clegg, he's wonderful in. And again, enough kind of oddness to make it interesting to those.
You get your David Hockfield on it as again as well.
Absolutely.
So all good there.
Yep.
Then Columbia Noir Volume 4. I mean, still in stock. No, out of stock. Sorry, tell a lie. The Volume 6, The Hammer, is still in stock, should I say, by the way. No, Columbia Noir 4 is in stock as well. Right. So these are in stock. Walk a Crooked Mile, Walk Eastern Beacon, Pushover, A Bullet Is Waiting, Chicago Syndicate, and The Brothers Rico from 48 to 57.
Again, for me, this is probably the weakest one. But again, they're all enjoyable, but none of them really stand out the way even 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3 have standout titles. These are all good, personally, without any of them being a standout. But again, wonderful cover, and it's just great to have more noirs, personally. But again, if you're not a noir head, whatever that is, I wouldn't say it's an essential set, for me at least. But.
Which brings us to the next celebration of a female star, which is Mae West in Hollywood. So with this rather strange cover.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the oddest covers, but wow, what a set. Films.
Incredible. I think
with Dietrich, they do a wee bit of wraparound as well.
Yes, indeed, that is true. Mae West, what a star. You know, very much her own, didn't conform, very clear to say, to what everybody else was sort of wanting her to be, or maybe, you know, to do. What a fascinating character. Yeah,
I mean, I think, well, certainly I had an opinion of Mae West or an idea of Mae West, but this set completely changed my mind as far as, again, like Dietrich, the kind of trailblazer she was for female salaries. Again, as you say, did what she wanted to do before she was eventually kind of boxed and finally kind of tied down to behave.
Corralled.
And yeah, and all these films are really enjoyable. And a couple of them are actually quite fantastic, with surprising leading men that perhaps haven't at that stage fully bloomed into who they would become. But it's just one of my favourite sets, and I would never have said that when it was announced. It was kind of like, really, a Mae West set? But then you learn so much about her.
So much. That's exactly it. I was looking at going, man, that's a lot of films of one actor. I don't think I can make my way through it, and I'm certainly not at the end of it yet. But actually, you just get appreciation every time you stick on one of the sets to go, these are fantastic, and she is a star every time she comes to the screen. That kind of nonconformity say, I've got a southern drawl. I'm not going to conform. I'm not going to be the films nearly always have the slim, really like doll-esque character in them as well, and she's very nice at playing opposite that and kind of giving it something else without being tawdry or anything. Just what a star.
And again, it's another reason why I keep watching films I haven't seen before, because you're going to get surprised and you might end up with one of your favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
There's always something around the corner that you just don't expect.
Yeah. Which brings us on to the release of Stanley Dong's Adventures, the 76 comedy threesome.
Yes. Well, you're not showing that you've bought it, but yes, I bought it.
I bought it. I absolutely did buy it. I have bought it. I have strong feelings on this, but most of my feelings are towards myself.
Yeah, now obviously this set has its knockers. But I will say, in slight defense of it, only slight defense of it, to be fair. I mean, that's it. In slight defense of it, the interviews with Stanley Long in a period in British film history where Lawrence of Arabia wasn't getting made anymore. The market had changed, the financing had changed, and the extras in his interviews are interesting from a historical perspective. The films are not interesting from a historical perspective, and I cannot recommend it in any way, shape, or form. But if you look at British film history as a whole, you can somehow justify it in your own mind.
I mean, spoken like a dirty old man. There is artistic merit.
Yes.
Look, I've said this before, probably off camera an awful lot to yourself and otherwise. I'm disappointed because I had seen those movies as a younger man and knew exactly what they were and still ordered the damn thing at full price. But it does again seem to fit with this idea. They're trying to chronicle British cinema, and they weren't actually by themselves as being the only film. Like Stanley Long wasn't the only person making those films around that time. So in a way that they did a kind of smaller set that unbelievably is in stock.
What shock.
That you can pick up. So if you want a Indicator box set that's on the cheaper side, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you do want to have one, this is one of the cheaper ways to do it. And will probably be in a still coming your way quite soon.
Yes, and no doubt they'll be releasing a full Confessions of box set to sit next to it in the shelf.
I'm not buying that one. I'm just not doing it.
You're just not going to be complete because of that.
I'm just not going to be complete because of it. I sort of, it would have been much better this moral high ground if I'd been able to say I'm not complete because of that now. But I mean, I failed that miserably. Yeah. That's just where we are. But in fairness, I haven't watched the documentaries. I haven't actually watched the conversations. So from that point of view, I'm I'm a hypocrite.
I still wouldn't recommend it, but
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I could break into this song. I probably would have been better than talking about that box set for a while, but we're past it now.
Yes.
I think Sam was talking about the Mae West box set rather than the
Yes, the Adventures box set. Please don't buy this. Please don't buy this.
Yeah, and I think honestly, if I haven't done any YouTube shorts, but I think if we're going to do a YouTube short, obviously the set has its knockers. Is a pretty good short to have. There you go.
I've been working on that for months.
Catch on.
It wasn't always knockers, but you know.
Yeah. From the sublime or the ridiculous to the sublime is probably a better way to put it. The Pamini organization is up next.
Yes. Something I had never heard of.
Me neither.
That is the beauty of Indicator. This is an essential set, regardless of history or entertainment or what you think of. Oh, I haven't heard of that. I'm not going to pick it up. Is it still in stock?
It is still in stock. I think this is one of the best box sets that there is, full stop. There's Ian Hendry, indeed. And Peter Crane. See how well you get to know these people. And that's kind of what I would say about this box set, is that you get a history of this short three film in a short company that was set together, the Pamini organization, but a couple of people who were in drama school or film school together, and they put this together. It's one of those things I can wholeheartedly recommend. I can't imagine anybody watching these three films and not going, there's real merit in here. There's like almost genius in some ways through the screen. And like, I think I said at the time, I was amazed, stunned in fact, that when they were doing the commentaries and the analysis of Hunted, which is the first film, that some of them were kind of the opinion that it maybe wasn't very good. Well, you just basically have Edward Wood and June Ritchie as in a room, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah,
Unreal.
it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, personally, Moments for me is the weakest one.
Yes, it is. I would agree with that. Yeah.
But to be fair, it's only because Hunted and Assassin are so amazing.
Yes, I would agree.
So I really need to watch Moments again, because I've watched Hunted about 3 times and Assassin at least twice. So I do probably need to watch Moments again. But it's perhaps just because the other two are so good.
Yeah, well, I think actually the bit the moment slips down on is the fact that it doesn't have those incredible central performances that Hunted and Assassin do. You know, the Woodward Ritchie in the first one, and then Ian Hendry, especially in the second film, is just, it's unreal how good that film is in a lot of ways. But it's the chronicling of that film company about the people that had shares, sold the shares because they needed a few quid, and then they liquidated their stuff. Like, the whole thing is amazing. And even Peter Crane, what he ended up doing in the 80s and 90s as a career, it's so fascinating.
Yeah. And again, who's releasing that? Well, apart from Indicator, nobody would be releasing that. Or maybe the BFI. Maybe the BFI eventually, but stunning.
Nobody's asking for it. That's the bit that I think is really, you know, normally you kind of see releases asked for and somebody will say, oh, but when is insert X coming? Or nobody was asking for any of this, and that it was put out was just terrific. As Sam said, Pamini, so good. What a set. And if he'd picked it up last year, it would have made the end of year list and quite high up too. It is sensational. And
again, for anybody kind of browsing their site and going, Pamini, what's that?
Never heard of it.
It's like, one of the films is only 45 minutes. What? It's like, but it's so good.
One of the best things I watched all last year was that very 45-minute film. So
why do we need 2.5 hour long films?
Indeed. You know, and if you were to make your new box set ranking, I would imagine the Pamini is quite high in there as well.
Absolutely.
Also talking about things that might rank quite highly. The Bogart set, the Colombian Noir 5.
That's pretty iconic, isn't it?
So the Bogart sets where he stars in most of them, but not all of them.
Yeah.
Range from 47 to 56.
Yeah, so Dead Reckoning, Knock on Any Door, Tokyo Joe, Sirocco, The Family Secret, which is the one he produced, and The Harder They Fall. Family Secret, I think I did a random review on. That's a really interesting little film with Lee J. Cobb that Bogart's company just produced. But all the other ones are just quite wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
The Harder They Fall is really good. He's a boxing promoter. Tokyo Joe. It's one of those exotic, films that they used to do, with lots of stars going to exotic places, even though they were just shot on the lot. Again, are any of them absolutely the greatest Humphrey Bogart films ever made? Perhaps not, but their batting average is really good.
I was gonna say the man had a pretty decent career, as it turns out, though, as well. Like it's not,
He really did.
He's made some of the greatest films of that era. So
considering he died sadly way too young.
Indeed. Just terrific performer.
Yeah.
And then the next proper box set I think we've got is the Universal Noir.
Yeah, this is interesting because obviously, how many numbers are they going to do for this? Because I do feel we're due another box set, aren't we? Because we haven't been doing a box set for a while.
Universal Noir 1 feels there's more than 2.
Yes, it feels ominous. It's going to be more noirs. But of course, this one contains one of my favourite titles of all time, Kiss the Blood Off My Hands. Burt Lancaster in London, believe it or not. And that's an absolute cracker. They're all really good, even Abandoned, about an abandoned child. It's quite moving and quite wonderful. I mean, they're all really good. This might be my third favourite noir set combined out of the Columbia and Universal.
Artwork not as strong on this, a bit like the Bogart's. That's all right, you know. I like the drawn artwork a lot
after
more.
Bogey, it's a bit.
Yes, that's true.
Trying to capture the bogey, so to speak.
And then the last box set that I think we'll talk about is the one that has just come out that will probably take me most of the year to watch.
Yes, I have only watched a couple.
So I've watched the whole first disc. It's the Magic
Beauty
Mutilation. Yeah. And when this was announced, I was very much a hard pass on this. Given my history with the Norman J. Warren set at that time, and I was like, this is another one of those kind of schlocky, low budget British filmmakers. And then it became quite clear, even when people started reviewing it, that that's absolutely not what this set is at all. I'm kind of fascinated by this set.
Yeah, the first. Oh, to be fair, I think I've only watched 2 of them. They're certainly interesting. And again, as you say, perhaps not what we expect, but you can kind of see on the list the number of films that are in.
32, I believe. I think there's 32, including the shorts, etc. that are on the disc.
Yes, it's 1967 to 2015. There's 34 hours.
34 hours
on set. As you can see, all my discs are elsewhere because they're in my backlog. But it's a somewhat striking image as well. Yeah,
much more. I mean, he definitely has a fantasy theme running through his films rather than a horror theme, at least the one thing that I've seen so far. And even at the end of the first disc, I think it's fair to say that it's a bit strange to start like every film in a set that's quite expensive, where it says, not all the films here. It's missing. We've kind of inserted little bits in, or we're missing bits, but this is the best we could do. And you kind of think, well, what am I watching it for? But it actually doesn't matter. I think we've got pretty good representations of his work. And this idea that he did 3 versions of Tristan and Isolde, or Assault, as he calls it, is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be an interesting journey.
Yeah.
Because if you actually read the synopsis of all of them, they all sound really interesting.
But like I said, I've watched the first 4, which is Tristan and Assault, which was this kind of very low-budget take on this. But there is no doubt, and even after watching that first movie, the man had real talent. Like, phenomenal talent for...
Yeah. Considering what he was shooting on.
What he was shooting with and where he was shooting, etc., and the people that he was shooting with. They then go to Happy Ever After, Secrets, and Almost a Movie, which are kind of much more standard crime-ish. I really like Secrets. I think Happy Ever After and Almost a Movie are pretty good. I mean, I enjoyed actually all of them. was nothing that I went, well, that was a waste of my time. And
Yeah.
we also get a lot of fragments of short movies that he has, and then what is the first part of the documentary that they put together with the filmmaker involved as well. This set I'm so excited for.
And as you say, it always helps when the filmmaker is actually around and alive to talk about it.
Indeed.
We were lucky with Herschel Gordon Lewis was still around, and William Griffey was still around to actually talk about his films.
Yeah.
Yeah, that always helps. But again, for these guys who are working with practically nothing, it just shows the passion. And yes, it might not be perfect from a technical standpoint or an acting standpoint, but the passion just comes out.
Yeah,
this guy compare it to the billion-dollar industry that you could put the claim that there is no passion. So,
well, this guy was working all year to be able to afford just to be able to fund his hobby, you know, and even the fact that somebody thought, do you know, it'd be a great idea if we put a set together on this, charged a fortune for it. Nobody will have heard of any of these films, but let's put the time. And by all accounts, it looks like it's sort of strangled the company for a lot of months because of the workload that was involved in doing it. But you also get the feeling that they're incredibly proud of it. And actually, this is something that they feel stands at the test of a symbol of the work that they've done and they've put together. And
yeah, it would be interesting to see where it is in a year, whether it would be sold out or whatever. But again, how much of that is, you know, it's a box set and it's a special edition, or, but again, the interest is there for interesting releases, and that's what Indicator do. So
yeah, and as time goes on, more and more interesting. What started off as Harryhausen Hammer, and then became Noir. You know, these very long running sets of series. Obviously, more Hammer sets to come as well. It's great to see the box sets be broken up by these real celebrations of filmmakers, directors, and actors,
and again,
actors and actresses.
You know, if you're more sane than we are, then you can pick and choose these box sets for your interests, and you know,
I think it's for
sale, or you know.
I think it's fair to say I'm not at the stage where I can hardly recommend this Michael J. Murphy box set, other than I am enjoying the journey through it and expect the journey to go on for weeks and months.
Yes, it's certainly the biggest box set by a wide margin as far as the number of films on it. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Something I would like to revisit at some stage as we go through it, to kind of say, okay, this is where I'm at with this, and this is how I feel about it. And it'd be also fascinating to kind of get the feedback from the people that put it together in some ways.
Again, how they decided to, you know what I want to do? I really want to put this Murphy box set together. I know we don't have all the elements, and we might just have to put in intertitles of what the scene would have been, but
so if anybody like Michael Brook or Sam or John, anybody wants to come on and have a discussion about it, you know, at 7 o'clock shadow, you know, on Twitter, you can hit me up, and I'd love to have that conversation about this, because like I say, it's sort of fascinating me at the moment, and is one of the real joys of collecting, especially with the Indicator line has been.
Yeah, and the choices they've made, as you said at the time, the Bloody Terror set seemed left field, and who made that decision, but same with the Mae West to an extent, but pleasantly surprised in one way or another.
3 sets to pick up, or 3 sets of films to pick up if they're out of stock. What are the 3 sets that you're saying you must get?
The Pimini, or Pemini even.
Yep.
And that was the Panini set. Cheese and
football
toast,
stickers.
Yes. The Pemini set, obviously Sinbad, but that's a given. I would say maybe the Dietrich set, and Hammer 2, Noir 1.
Okay.
I think I'll go with that.
Okay, my 3, I'm going to go Pemini as well. For one of my 3, I'll go, since you went Hammer 2, it is my favorite of Hammer, but I'll go Hammer 3, and I will go for Fuller Mae West.
Absolutely,
something like that. Well,
we never had Mae West versus Fu Manchu.
That's true. So they're my recommendations if you need some from this. An hour and a half later, we've made our way through every box set that there is.
Yes, it's not that.
What
many.
else is there left to discuss of Indicator and their line?
Well, they're the little almost box sets.
The little almost box sets, and then everything else that we'll have. So we'll return with a future episode, whether it's next week or whether we get the time to do it. Otherwise, we shall see. But thanks.
Yeah, we'll give you a chance to go out and buy them all.
Indeed, and
reload for the next one. Yeah,
indeed. Thanks to anybody who stayed, watched, and spent your time here. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me on again.
Oh, indeed. If anybody wants to find you, where will they find you?
Solitary Ronin Films on YouTube. I am not familiar with all these social media platforms that you kids get into, so it's just Solitary Ronin Films on YouTube.
Indeed. So you'll need somebody to set up a fan account for you. That's what I mean.
Yeah, something like that.
That's what I heard out of that. And again, you can catch me on the channel as well. But we look forward to having you back again when we're talking about more Indicator. And thanks everybody for being in the comments. And we'll catch us again soon on the channel. Take care. All the best. Bye.